Close your eyes. Bring your Guru or your Ishtadevata to the heart center. And at your heart, having seen the Ishtadevata or the Guru, we will chant Om 3 times out loud. Breathing in. Om. Om Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Gurave Namaha. Hari Om Tatsa. Yesterday we talked about a story in which some of the tattvas that are about Shiva were apparent. Now today I'll tell you some of the tattvas and then go to another story which will give you the idea of what is Shiva. You see, very often, and this has been a practice in the past many years, that people are told that you cannot find the divine because we are not good enough, we are not fit enough, and because we are not fit enough, we don't have the prapti, the good fortune of getting the divine. And this, with a little bit of the Victorian puritanical feelings, have brought the tendency to think that we have to be very, very perfect and in a very coordinated manner. And anything that's outside of the conservative way of life is imperfect. So what happens is, and people did say that for some time because they did not want the others who were casual about spirituality to move into it. They didn't want people who were atheists and people who didn't believe to walk in there and disturb the minds of a sadhaka who was already struggling with his own mind. They didn't want to give it to somebody who didn't have any faith at all because their vibrations would disturb the journey of many other people on the way. Now, it doesn't matter if you don't have a faith or not. The point is, you have to be open enough to say, I don't have faith as yet. I would like to explore and then decide for myself whether I believe in it or not. Otherwise, what happens is we have two opposites. One is belief and the other one is doubt. Whatever is said about a particular thing, there is always a doubt about it. That's one attitude of the mind. And when you have a doubt about it, even if you see the spelling of that something, you start getting negatively impressed. For example, if you see somebody in a gheru, then you wonder, oh, I'm sure he's a con man, or I'm sure that he's out to make a bunch of money out of people who don't know. And then if you go to the government office, then you say, oh, the prime minister's not doing properly. They're all trying to take us for a ride. Some people might, some people might not. It is not relevant to us when we are moving on the spiritual path. On the spiritual path, we are asked to be positive with a very specific reason. So when you are constantly negative about something and you can't trust it, it's called doubt. Then there is another extreme that if you like something, whatever that something is all about, you say, I believe in it. Somebody tells you, go jump in the well 3 times and come out, you will get enlightenment. You will go and do it because you think that somebody says you will get enlightenment. It's about God, so it ought to be true. Go break 20 coconuts in the temple, offer it to Ganapati and say, please help me in my examination. And it might happen suddenly just by good fortune. And then you'll think that any time in my life, any difficulty comes, I can bribe Ganesha with so many coconuts. So you believe, and somebody else comes and says, I'm a Ganpati Bhakta, then you say, oh yeah, even I am a Ganesha Bhakta. Then you have a fraternity. When you have a fraternity, it becomes a rigid system. When there is a rigid system, then there is enmity because you think that your system is good, somebody else thinks their system is good, and neither are open to each other's views at all. And it doesn't come out of spiritual experience. It comes out of the same mind that has been politically tuned for centuries in believing that only one person can be right and that person is me, and everybody else would be wrong unless they agree with what I say. So there is this quality of belief and doubt that keep coming. Neither of them are spiritual. Both of them are imperfections of the mind. They are part of vasanas. They are because the mind has been conditioned this way or that way. So when we say go on the spiritual path, go with a pure mind, what they are saying is leave your impressions aside. It may be true, it may not be true. Everything in it need not be true. Everything need not be false. Go with an open mind and see what comes to you when your mind is free of impressions. And that is why they say the yama niyamas are so very important, because you are not going into the spiritual field and then trying to open your mind. You come with an open mind when you come to explore. You don't come with a thesis or a statement and then try to prove that you're coming with an open mind. This is very important even in scientific matters, because very often we have seen somebody will have some sort of a principle that they build upon. They invest so much in it, they become known for that particular principle. Now, if somebody else comes and says something else which is contrary to that, they will never accept it, because accepting it means that they lose something of the investment they have put in. Bombay students will know, I usually used to tell them these stories of Mullah Nasiruddin. So let me start with one little story. Mullah Nasiruddin was a uh, Sufi saint, and on one occasion he came to Delhi, and in Delhi he saw people buying vegetables at the vegetable counters. So he was watching them and he saw that they bought, about a kilogram of bitter gourd, a kilogram of beans, a kilogram of cauliflower. And then they would go to the chilies, that is the green peppers, and they would buy just a few green peppers, maybe about 50 grams or something. He'll have about 10 or 15. Now, he thought to himself that these people, poor things in India, it's an underdeveloped country, people are poor. They cannot afford this very special, delicious looking green vegetable. He had never seen it before. He said, but I have money, so let me go and buy a lot of it and then let me eat it. So he went and he picked up a kilogram of green peppers, went sat under a tree, and he said, let me see how this tastes. And he put one in his mouth, bit into it, and tears ran down his cheeks because it was pungent. He couldn't take it. So he said, oh my God, why are the Indians buying this? Maybe because the one I've eaten is not good. Maybe the next one will be better. So what he did was he took another one and bit into it. The same thing happened. And he thought this one wasn't good either. They're all spoiled. So let me see He kept eating like this and throwing away each one. Meanwhile, his tongue was burning with the pungency. Along came another man who was a friend of his who knew him from before, and he said, "Hey, Mullah, what are you doing sitting and eating those chilies?" And the mullah said, "Well, you see, I came to the market and I was thinking of buying something, and I saw all the Indians going to this counter and they bought just a little bit of it, whereas everything else they bought larger amounts. So I thought to myself that the chilies, these green peppers, must be very dear, very expensive. So I said to myself, since I have money, let me buy a whole lot of it and enjoy it. But now that I'm eating each one, maybe they are spoiled because they're so pungent, they burn my tongue." So then his friend says, "Oh no, you got it all wrong, Mullah. The fact is that the green peppers, the chilies that they're called here, are very spicy, very pungent, and they are only used in a very, very tiny amount in a dish to give it a flavor. So you might use in a whole dish for 5 people, you might use 1 or 2 chilies. You don't just go on eating it by itself." So Mullah said, he said, "Now I understand." And his friend walked out. Then the friend was so happy he had convinced Mullah. So he turned around and he looked after a while and he saw him still eating the green peppers with the tears running down his cheek. So he was surprised and he came back and he said, "I thought you said you understood the reason why people buy so little green peppers, but you're still eating them. Why?" And the mullah said, "Earlier on, I was eating the green peppers, but now I'm eating my money. Because I've invested so much in it, you see, I can't throw away money." So this is a way of understanding that we invest ourselves, our identities in many, many things in life. And when that thing gets hurt, we think that we have been damaged. So you can identify with your wealth, with your profession, like I'm a trader, I'm a merchant, I'm a businessman, I'm a corporate, or you might think I'm a health giver, or I'm a doctor, or I might be a PhD, I might be professor in Harvard, or you might identify with something else like a power of the people, popularity. You think you're just a two film debut actress, or then you might act with somebody bigger, and then you might think, "Wow, I've gone up the scale because I've got the best actor to act with. Now I'm going to be a top line actress, and I'm going to have hordes of money." And then I'm made. Then suddenly, what happens? Along comes the pandemic, and business collapses. Um, Beauty to a large extent will collapse because you cannot go to salons anymore and do what you want to do with your skin and your face and other things. Suddenly you find you're lost. You say to yourself, "I was doing all this and now I have nothing to do. There's no meaning in my life. Where did I go wrong?" So they say that when you invest in something, don't invest in something that is temporary. Invest in something that gives you permanent joy. Your body is not going to be the same till you die. If you're 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, you change. The body changes. It's not a permanent thing. You're not going to be pretty at 80 like you were at maybe 20 or 16 or whatever. Your business will keep fluctuating up and down, up and down. You're not always going to be a millionaire, even if you're one now. And then suddenly you'll realize that when you're a doctor, there are things that you know about illnesses. You may be the best virologist in the world, but suddenly you're um, uh, sort of dumbfounded when you look at a particular new virus that has come up and none of your medicines seem to touch it. Now, all that is fine. That is just so that we understand that there are certain things in life that are temporary. Don't put your heart where um, where don't put your treasure, where there are moths that will come and eat, and ants will eat it. And Jesus says that instead, put your hold on to the treasures of heaven. What are the treasures of heaven? The yamas, being non-violent, being satisfied with what you have, not constantly discontented, thinking so and so has something better, so and so has something better, and then finishing your life being miserable that you are not got what you wanted, or that somebody has got something better than you. So they say, keep your treasures of heaven in the place, because where your treasure is, there your heart will be. So who should be your Hridaya Vastu? The treasure that is close to your heart is called the Hridaya Vastu, or the object that is close to your heart. So if you are looking around to find a Hridaya Vastu, don't stop for anything that is temporary, even though you might get a pleasure out of it. The Shastra does not tell you don't enjoy what you get, you should enjoy what you get. But do not depend on that as the single one thing that is necessary for your happiness and your peace. That single one thing, they say, is the divine. And that is why in the Indian subcontinent, they will send off the children to the Gurukul away from their parents while they are 7, so that they can have a spiritual experience and then come back and live in the world with discrimination. And it was not only in this Indian subcontinent, all over the East it was done. And that is how Jesus left home at about 13 and went for his personal training. The Islamic world, they send children who are a little older, maybe 14, 15, 16, to the mountains sometimes to sit and meditate and to learn about spirituality. What is the reality of things? What is permanent? What is the truth? So that you seek first the kingdom of heaven, as Jesus says, and all things will be added unto you. Then whatever you get, you're grateful, and then you enjoy it the way it should be enjoyed, rather than being miserable about what you have got. So what is it that here in the Shiva Tattva, what they are saying is, do not go here and there. Just like Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. In your heart is your Atma. In your Atma is the divine source. So seek first the kingdom of heaven, and then all things shall be given unto you. Once you find that something inside yourself, then you don't have to worry about anything, because what you need will constantly be provided in any case. So that's what they are telling you. So here in this Purana, they are Shiva Purana, they are saying Shiva is the ultimate. He is that something which is the truth. He was there before the world came into being. He is there in the middle of all this when evolution is happening. And he will be there long after the world has gone also. So he is called the truth in this context, because that is what the truth is. So they are saying the entire world, the entire universe, the entire universes, because there are many, many universes, many Milky Ways, millions and millions of Milky Ways, millions and millions of suns, millions and millions of earths, millions and millions of universes. And all these universes is Shiva. That's what they are saying. Shiva is in everything, should be known by a scholar and by a sadhaka. Once you know that Shiva is in everything, then you do not feel miserable about anything that you don't have. They say the beginning with Brahma, that is a creative force, and there are many, many Brahmas, and ending with a blade of grass. Whatever is filling the universes is Shiva. This is what is called Shiva, the consciousness that is permanent and present in everything that is in manifestation. The table in front of me, the chair in front of me, the curtain in front of me. If I have a maid, that maid, my child, my guru, everything is filled with Shivatvam. Shivatvam means Shivaness. When he wishes, different things are created. They say he knows everything because he's omniscient and he pervades in every little thing. So he knows what that thing wants immediately without the help of sense organs. He doesn't need eyes, ears, nose, mouth, tongue, skin. He doesn't need any of that. He knows, he wants to know and he knows immediately. He doesn't even need a mind to know because he is what he is trying to understand. So he says he himself creates the universes and this consciousness enters it, but at the same time it stands far off. The Chit Swarupa, meaning the knowledge formed being, who is pure, does not really enter it. Oh, how can you say something is in everything and then it doesn't enter it? So the Shiva Purana will give you an example. Imagine that you see the sun in the sky. The sun is there. It shines down in the river that is flowing. It is in the water. Its heat is in the water. It pervades the water. But at the same time, you cannot say it has actually entered the water. So anything with light, luminary things are reflected in the water, but they don't actually enter them. So in the same way, Shiva also appears to enter everything, but in fact, there isn't, he doesn't enter it. At the same time, Shiva alone, Shiva means the auspicious one, the sacred one. He alone manifests himself as everything. He becomes so many things. Out of his material, he creates the universes. And he says that when you are ignorant of the fact that Shiva is the only one, that is the Advaita Bhavana, you think there is no two Bhagavans, then you are wise. If you think, no, there is somebody else, there is another entity, I'm praying to Shiva, but my Ishta Devata is Vishnu, is Krishna, or my Ishta Devata is Jesus, but why am I praying to Shiva? These things, they say, it is a defect of the mind, because if your mind were buddhi oriented, this is manas, the logical mind. If your mind were buddhi oriented, it will have the discrimination. It will have the discrimination to know that there is in a cyclone, there is a center point, which is called the eye of the cyclone. And that eye may be in the center, but wherever the cyclone blows, the eye will go with it. So it's in the same way that you say that it is only one eye of the cyclone, the same way there is only one divinity, one supreme consciousness. There is no second supreme consciousness. So because you have only one supreme consciousness, that the world is not in chaos. Now you might tell me, but there's a lot of chaos in the world. This is not chaos. What they are talking when they say chaos in the world, they are saying when the planets don't revolve in their own orbits, when the stars are falling down, when the earth gets parched, when there is no water anywhere in the earth, where people are falling down and dying just like that with no understandable reason, where birds and animals are falling dead, where things are rotting, decaying, and in the middle of all that, people having wars with each other. This is what is called a disharmony. So Vedantins, Vedantins means the people who have learned the Upanishad, that is people who have learned the Veda and who have explored the meaning after their experience. They call him eternal and non-dualistic. There is only one supreme. The individual soul, though it is part of his, part of Shiva, because your soul is born out of that Shivaness, is deluded by ignorance. He thinks he is different from Shiva. if he is released from ignorance, he becomes Shiva. Now you saw this in the beginning. Shivani put on a little video. If you saw that, this is a movie, a bit of a movie about Adi Shankaracharya, who brought the quality of Advaita or the non-duality into the philosophical world where people had different ideas. And it is said that right from birth, Adi Shankara was a born sannyasin. People often say that he was an avatar of Shiva. And he um, went around um, debating and explaining to people who had many, many different ideas where everything had gone into limbo. He would go around and explain and had debates and establish the fact that there was only one supreme divine. So you see in this thing, this movie you saw just now, a little bit of it, he goes around saying, this is called the Nirvana Shatakam of Shankaracharya. And he says, I'm not the mind, I'm not the senses, I'm not the mother, I'm not the child. I have no identity. I'm not a guru, I'm not a sishya. I'm not the pranas. I'm not the ahankar. I'm not chitta. I'm not any of this. I am Shiva. He says, Shivoham. Shivoham means Aham Shiva. I am Shiva. I'm Shiva. And what does he say? That he has the Shiva consciousness in him. It is the same thing that Jesus says. Wait for some time, he tells his disciples, and one day you'll understand my Father and I are one. The same thing that a Sufi, I forget his name right now, but he says, Anal Haq, I am the divine, and I am Al, I am that. So he says, and people think that he's trying to say he's God, and so they anyway skin him and then set him on fire. But it didn't miss his understanding, because he was laughing when they did all this, and he kept saying Anal Haq, Alal Haq, because he's experiencing that sense of immortality. And what people are doing is peeling his skin, which is temporary in any case, which doesn't bother him, because he has seen his own infinite innerness. So he says, I'm the supreme. Jesus says, I'm my Father. And Shankara says, Shivoham Shivo. So it doesn't matter which religion you are, which idealistic methodology you have. The whole thing that Shiva is about is that he is the supreme consciousness everywhere. Every person is a part of that supreme consciousness. And because we are a part of that supreme consciousness, we forget that we are part of it, and we think we are separate from the divine, and we have no way of reaching it because we are not good enough. This is something that has been dimmed into us through many centuries. So we don't even try to search because we think we will fail. And here is Shivaratri around the bend, and there are people who kept the tradition alive. Why? Because they are telling you, you are Shiva. All you got to do is get rid of your delusion that you are separate from the divine. You are the divine. When you remove this delusion, then you will see the qualities you have, how unlimited can be your empowerment. And then they say, the Shiva pervades all creatures, whether they have life or they don't have life, as we see it. He is the benefactor. Just as when you have fire, you must have seen in places where people are creating fire by striking two stones or rubbing two pieces of wood. That's how they did it in the olden days. They still do it for ovens. What you're doing is creating friction, and through that friction, you are manifesting the fire which is latent and dormant in that object. There is fire in the stone. There is fire in the earth. There is fire in the wood. There is fire in everything. It's one of the elements of one of the Pancha Mahabhutas. But only that person who works with it, churning it, sees it manifested. If you are in Ohio and you are churning this stick or striking two stones, you will see it. Sitting here, I will not see it. So each person has to churn themselves to find this inner fire inside themselves. And then they say, when you understand all this, if you slowly start developing a devotion to Shiva, that is to the inner source of who you really are, by whatever name you might call this divine, the supreme consciousness, whatever name you call it, whatever ideology you belong to, when you start thinking about this and you start saying that this consciousness is in me as well as in everyone else, it means that that consciousness or that divinity has already entered you. So all you have to do now is to slowly, slowly move away from the delusion that you are separate from somebody else. Now, when you see a sprout, a germ, cereal that has sprouted, or a pulse that has sprouted, the sprout will exhibit many, many aspects. It's because of the illusory perception, you'll think that the sprout will now become a tree. But if you cut the sprout, the seed will produce yet another sprout. So it is the seed that is important here because the seed contains the tree that is yet to come. So the perfectly wise person who understands this, that he is the seed and the seed is the divinity within him. And the sprout that he is, that when he becomes a different tree, when he can give mangoes, he can be bare, he can be dried up in the drought, or he can be bring out different sorts of sweet fruits. All these things, if he thinks these are what he is, then they say he is not wise because he has to look at himself as the seed, and the seed contains what he is going to be. And when he knows that, when he is able to search and find the seed, which is our soul within us, then the soul knows what it's going to be. And the soul will slowly, slowly take you to that point where you yourself see yourself as Shiva. Shivoham, Shivoham. And on the way, you will be constantly helped by the divine forces, the forces of good, the forces that have already reached, like your guru, who is in tune with every other guru in the universe. So all gurus will come together to elevate you because you are struggling. So everything is Shiva, they say. Shiva is everything. Just like the sun is seen differently in water. If the water is shaking, it is shaking, the sun shakes. It's a clear water, it's seen clearly. But the sun is not tied up by the water or its waves. In the same way, the individual soul, which is tied up to avidya, is contaminated by that avidya because it becomes the ahamkar. Shiva has no ahamkar. The individual soul is insignificant and therefore it experiences the fruits of action. But Shiva is not under ignorance, and so he is not contaminated. So when, if you have gold and you purify it with chemicals, it regains its original value. The same way, when the consecrated soul, when your soul is consecrated, then it attains purity. That is what is called Chitta Shuddhi. How is it consecrated? You come into the sealed energy of a divine person, a guru, a saint, and immediately those saints' vibrations purify you. So they say that in the Purana, the devotee should go to a competent preceptor with a devout and reverential feeling. So you don't go to the preceptor, you go because you want to know. You are thirsty for knowing. You don't go there because you want to examine whether that no man or woman knows more than you and you know better, or you want to show to that person you know so much. These things can be very, very subtle. Somebody asks you a question and you say, yeah, I know this. It shows that you are not willing to listen to somebody else. Listen to somebody else. So they say, go to a preceptor, a living, liberated soul, and you go to them with devout or reverential feelings. Why? Because he has merged with Shiva. So when you go to your preceptor or your guru, you are going to Shiva. That's what they mean. Um, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma. You are going to that supreme that is called the Param Brahma, beyond everything else, Brahman. That supreme force is called Shiva. And then you go with reverence because all whatever you say, that person will know more than you. Whether you like his eating habits, his clothing habits, his face, whether he's fat or thin, or whether he has a beard or he's clean shaven, whether he smiles at you, whether he flings a stone at you, or whether he ignores you and walks. None of these things matter because you're not going to him to go into a personal relationship of the material world. You're going there to form a Sishya Guru Sishya relationship so that he who is waiting to pour the truth that he has got into another worthy vessel will be happy to receive you and teach you. So um, go worship him and serve him, imagine, considering he is Shiva because he is, and so are you, but you don't realize it, he has realized it. So when you go to this being like this, then slowly, slowly, that person will do what is necessary to remove your ego and help you to uh, understand this Shivatvam with experiential way. And then your impressions that you always had that my guru has to look handsome, he has to have a beard or not have a beard, it has to flow like Jesus Christ touching the staircase as he walks, or he has to go without any clothing except a cowpeen. All these impressions that we have grown up with or we have got along the way or through many lifetimes, but all these impressions will fall off. And then you gain the knowledge and your the dirt that you see in your soul, in your mind, is the impressions that are left over, which do not let you look at your own reflection. It's like when your mirror is filled with dust, you can't see yourself. You'll see yourself in a very odd way, vague way. You got to clean the mirror. So this cleaning the mirror inside is called Chitta Shuddhi. When you clean the mirror, you will see the Guru as being Shiva. And the Guru will turn and say to you that you are I are the same, we carry the same consciousness. So you see in that movie that I showed you in the beginning, that Adi Shankara, who was the Shankaracharya, the first Shankara, who people call an avatar of Shiva, is in his youth, he is going around and discovering that he is not the senses, he is not the ahamkar, he is not the chitta, he is not the panchabhutas. All these are part of his body and his mind. He realizes, I am the supreme consciousness beyond all this. And who is walking with him, unknown to him, is Shiva. On the other side, you see the other man walking. That is a symbolic way of saying that Shiva is walking with him, and you see him stumble at a certain place, and there is blood from his mouth and his feet. This is his sacrificing his identity with the body and mind, and witnessed by all the great sages and the divine beings in the universe. They are witnesses to him having gained the Shivatvam, because eventually he goes to Shiva and Shiva takes him and walks with him side to side that we are the same. He doesn't say, now you're my servant, you polish my trishul. That's not the sort of thing that happens. It's a state of consciousness where you merge with the supreme consciousness. So when you're freed from the various impressions, these impressions create the ego, the ahamkar. You get buddhi or pure intellect. And then Shiva's grace comes to such a person because he's struggling. And with that grace, he is elevated and he becomes a living, liberated soul. And when the body perishes, because the body has its own time frame, the prarabdha karma, there is of the body. The body has its own prarabdha karma, which is different from the karma of the mind, which is different from the karma of a soul. And this, when the body is there and the person recognizes that he is um, part of the supreme consciousness, then what happens to the body doesn't bother him, but he lives with it because he follows the rules of the spiritual life, that everything has to exist until its warranty period is over and it will fall off by itself. Death has no fear for him anymore. Crucifixion has no fear for him anymore. He becomes a living, liberated soul. So if a person is not terribly excited when he gets something good, and if a person is not in the doldrums and upset because something not pleasant is happening to him, then he's called a perfectly wise person. Because a perfectly wise person will know that these are passing things, these are transient, temporary, and it will not last for long. Because why? The divine is in my heart. And when the divine is in my heart, I'm content. I don't have to crave for anything. I don't have to get rid of anything because he's there. So discrimination between the temporary and the permanent is got through the practice of yoga. Oh, I want you to understand this. Yoga means when you do the asanas, you are realizing what is temporary about your body. Your body can be rigid one day, another day it may be very fluid and flexible. The third day, no matter what you do, nothing. So you don't even, you're not even able to get up and do it. Then the idea is not just to understand your body as in being fit or not fit. Too, the body is telling you, I too am impermanent. Don't think that getting your body nice and flexible, like you see on many WhatsApps, you see little children at 4 or 5 or something doing gymnastics and passing it off as yoga. It's good that they're able to shape their bodies that way, nothing wrong with it. But that alone is not yoga. Swami Satyananda used to say, do you want to be a glorified rubber band? Please understand that I am not running down asanas. I'm all for asanas. I used to do a lot of asanas earlier. Maybe I'll do some now. I'm not against pranayama, but the yamas and niyamas also matter. And that is what Swami Niranjan is trying to tell us now, that it is not just a technique. It is what you are on the inside. What is your consciousness all about? And that is what you have to go deep into and find out through the asanas, through the pranayama, through your yoga nidra, through your antarmauna, through your meditative practices, and through interacting with the world around you. How do you react when your boss walks into the room? How do you react when your servant walks into the room? How do you react when your spouse walks into the room? How do you react when somebody you don't like walks into the room? That means you are still not, if you are reacting differently to different people, then that means you are not equanimous. And equanimity taking everything, the Tulya Drishti that you have for everything being the same Shiva, that comes with practice of this and being aware of what is happening. So they say when you start seeing that you have got this some different energy which has been supporting you all this time, which you never noticed, then when you get that knowledge that something is temporary, it will go away, and something is permanent and it will stay with me, and you try to understand what it is, you become liberated once you get that knowledge. So you don't have to be a person lying on a bed of thorns to be liberated. It is not all that difficult. Then at that time, if Shiva is the guru that, or uh, um, whoever it is, a Christ is Shiva, a Allah is Shiva, the Vishnu is Shiva, Devi is Shiva, you are Shiva, that God is Shiva, everything is Shiva. Once you start realizing that when you get this supreme being in your heart, it gives you a certain joy and peace. When the joy and peace comes, you don't crave after other things. And you're so grateful for it, you get devotion. Devotion happens. You cannot make it happen. Devotion has to spontaneously arise in you. So you also get unflinching faith in that divine. And that salvation comes with that. So they say, after seeking refuge in him, one does not run after worldly existence. You may live, you might come back, you might come to do things, but you don't think that you're mortal anymore. So at the outset, this instruction, what I told you now, was given by Shiva in front of his lingam to Vishnu. Vishnu gave this information to Brahma, the creative force. And then Brahma gave it to his children, the mind-born children of Vishnu. Brahma gave it. And these children who were always born enlightened with the Shivatvam in them and constantly held it with them, they communicated it to Narada. Narada communicated it to Vyasa. And Vyasa communicated it to the Sutta, who is then talking in the Shiva Purana. Now, what do you mean by they don't say that it was talked about? Even the word I use, communicated, is wrong. What the word says is it was given. The Shivatvam, the Shivoham, that aspect, you get a millisecond flash of something else, some other energy, and that has been given from one to the other, one to the other. This is what forms a parampara. And Sutta of the Shiva Puranam says, I've now given it to you for the welfare of the world. You shall establish this in the world strenuously. To who is he saying this? Anybody wants to guess? To who is Sutta saying this? That for the welfare of the world, establish this in the world. He's saying it to you, and he's saying it to me. What is he saying? All that we have understood this far. When you come across somebody that you don't like and you get angry, immediately remind yourself, the same Shiva in me is in that person also. Make this an abhyasa, because I've already lit the flame, but you have to keep fanning it to make it into a fire. That is what Sutta is telling all of us. And when you have that sort of, more and more people become like that, there will be less and less of violence and war in the world. So that is how Kali Yuga becomes transformed into Satya Yuga. So these people, they tell him, all the gods who are asking questions about all this, I said, our mental delusion has vanished. Having got this excellent knowledge and knowing that it yields salvation, and meaning also that we trust you, because you are the guru who was teaching us here, the sutta there. And if you have experienced it, we trust that you will not be bluffing to us. And Swami Satyananda used to always say, protect your discipleship. Don't bother about your guru, because um, it is your openness that can give you any knowledge from any source. God can come through anybody. So, and then he says, if you attain some devotion, even a tiny bit of devotion, then you must get it not just for yourself to be happy and at peace always, so that you can share it with the rest of the universe. And sharing it make everybody else's lives happier and at peace. So they say when you go on doing it, if you listen to this aspect of knowledge with devotion, you will slowly attain perfect knowledge of Shiva. You will have worldly pleasures and you will have salvation. So this is the rough idea of what is Shiva. You are Shiva, basically. But the point is, slowly, we have to understand more and more, and we'll increase this over the days that are coming with Shakti tomorrow, and then Shakti and Shiva, what are they in technical terms as well as on a personal level. Now, these people who came to Shiva, I mean to the, what's the time? 4:30 to 5:30, it's becoming, okay. They asked him, give us an idea of what is Shivaratri and what is the Vrat for Shivaratri. Now, it is almost time, so let us go to another little video, and I'll tell you the story tomorrow along with what shouldn't take up any more time, because we might have other programs that are coming. So Shivani, close your eyes, visualize your Guru or Ishta Devata or Shiva or Christ. It doesn't matter who, everything is the supreme auspicious consciousness. And the supreme auspicious consciousness is called Shiva. So, keeping that divine figure in your heart, realize that you are not separate from the divine. And because we have been so long tied up to myths of how we are not good enough, we don't feel that we can be something so divine and so precious. So keep in mind that you are precious and the divine has created you so because you are precious and keeps you that way. And never ever give up trying to finish with the delusion of separateness from something or somebody. Now, let us chant Om 3 times together, breathing in. Om. Om. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Trambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanat Mrityor Mukshiyamamvitat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om to the Shiva in all of being.